Hello, 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 it's Maddie here, and today I have a time-lapse of the self-portrait I did a little while ago. I think it was, golly, might have been March, I think. But you can see that I started with just a sketch and then started adding in some flat colour. I did have my reference images on the left, a couple of selfies and a non-selfie just to get the proportions right. And then started adding in some shadows and highlights just to get the values in. The sketch itself was quite rough, and in hindsight I would probably go back and finesse that and make sure the sketch was accurate, but I guess that's the benefit of being in practice. And I'm a bit out of practice because I've been more focused on music than art, but I find that the more I get into it, the more I understand the most efficient way to do things. It just takes a little bit longer when you're out of practice, and that's okay. It was a great learning experience. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding in, just trying to get the proportions right, not so much focusing on the details. Maybe getting a little bit carried away with the eyes, but eyes are fun to draw. I don't know. So the reason you do that is just if I was to go in, for example, and do all the eyelashes and really finesse that one little area and then zoom out and find that the proportions are all wrong, I wasted all that time working on the eyes. And so the best way to work is actually large areas, get it right, zoomed out, and then slowly zoom in and work each area to the same degree of completion at any one point. An easy way to do that if you're just starting out and don't inherently do that is actually to work with a large brush and be zoomed out and not zoom in until you have finished that layer, and then zoom in and keep building it. Perhaps a little closer to the way a traditional artist might work with oils, for example. It just kind of forces you to consider the picture as a whole rather than focusing on minute details, because the minutiae just doesn't matter at that stage of the painting. But you know, sometimes I start focusing on teeth and they look ridiculous, and it's fine because I'll paint over them later. It's just not the most efficient way of doing it. So this painting actually did take me 5 or 6 hours, I think, which is an unbelievable amount of time. But again, learning experience. I've sped it up here for your benefit, for my benefit, but know that it took me a lot longer. You'll see later as well that I do use the lasso tool and a few other tools just to move features around. I do have to give a shout out to my sister who, bless her heart, sat there and every single time I would send her a new iteration of this painting would say, oh no, that feature's not quite right, that feature's not quite right. And I think if the likeness is in any way acceptable, it's due to her. So thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. So you'll see that I am adding more shadows and things. I was a little bit hesitant with adding shadows. I do that, it gets a little bit flat. So I do try and add the shadows in as much as I can. Though of course there's no extreme lighting here, it's just a self-portrait. The reason I decided to do a self-portrait, being out of practice, it's just a nice exercise. If I don't have sufficient reference images or I need to see something at a certain angle, I have a mirror to my right, and I know my face somewhat. You'd hope so, being as vain as I am. So yeah, that's why I chose to do a self-portrait. If you follow me on Instagram, so, and you should, mgs.creative, subtle plug, you'll see that I'm actually doing a portrait challenge at the moment, which is drawing myself in 30 different art styles based on cartoons that I love. So I never grew up and I absolutely adore TV shows that are animated. So I started with, what was it, Simpsons, I think? And then moved on from there. I was planning on doing 30 in the month of May, and that absolutely fell off the wagon because, you know, life happens. But I do plan on finishing that project because it's super fun and it's just a great experience, and it's getting my muscle memory back, which is really lovely. So keep an eye out. I will be uploading some videos of the processes there as well. Not sure when, but you know, we'll see. And if you have any suggestions or things you'd like to see, let me know. So you'll see here that I've repainted in the teeth and blacked out the teeth at one stage, so I know I would look no good without teeth, which is, you know, nice to know. But you might see as well, it's quite sped up, so you might miss it, but I do flick the image back and forth, and that's a really good tool to kind of reset the brain. When you look at an image for a really long time, you kind of start to miss, perhaps proportions are wrong or it's skewed a bit to the left, and in flipping it, it's almost like getting a fresh look at the image. So I do that pretty consistently throughout the process. It allows me to really finesse what I'm doing and understand if I've been tilting it to one side, which I often do. In terms of the reference images I picked, the outfit I'm wearing here, I didn't have an actual image of, I don't think, but it's one that I wear quite often. So I thought it was pretty pretty quintessentially me. So I found a few pictures that had those items in it just to so that I could use them for texture reference, perhaps not lighting, because the lighting is just not the same in any of these pictures, which was a little difficult, but I think that's the way I wanted to work. I didn't want to work just from a single photo reference. I wanted it to be its own unique angle, and be me, but not be based on any one particular photo. And then you'll see in the following 30 images, I did use this as a reference point. You'll see there I've drawn in my beauty spots, moles, and wrinkles because I'm radiant, and then just starting to finesse the details, including the hair. So one thing as well, I'm not sure if this, I don't think it's exclusive to digital painting, but you like to put the details in the most in the areas of focus. So you'll notice if you zoomed in on any part of the hair that none of it looks photorealistic. Well, none of the whole thing looks photorealistic, but relative to the eyes, for example, there's just not as much detail, and that's because the more detailed areas are going to draw the eye more. So I want to do more detail in the face, which is where I want people to focus most. The hair, whilst I want it to be a good representation of hair, doesn't need to look perfect. Also, hair is difficult to draw. I will admit. So then, yeah, I just put it on added my jewelry because I had to. I love my piercings, so had to put them in. And I think that's about it. I put the grey background on, added a bit more shadows, and of course, my little logo. That's my process. I really hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions about other things I do, any suggestions, let me know. But thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.